find interesting about suspension bridges, those big cables, you know, the ones that's holding everything up, they're under a massive amount of tension all the time. You know, constant stress is placed on those wires. And here's the thing most people don't realize about that. Maybe it's just how my mind works, but that tension isn't the problem. That tension is the whole reason that that bridge is up. If you remove that tension, that bridge collapses. And I think a lot about that in my line of work when working with a lot of different people, you know, because the human body operates essentially in the same way. You know, it was built for stress, physical stress, daily demand, not, you know, occasionally doing stuff here and there, but constant stress. So we were built to walk long distances, you know, to carry things, to move things through the world that ultimately pushed us back. And that stress wasn't something the body had to survive. It was the signal the body used to ultimately stay strong. And so if you take that away, it's only a matter of time before something starts to give. Peace, love, light, healing. I'm Nariah, the founder of Iron City Biomechanics, and we help bridge the gap between healthcare and fitness. And today I want to talk to you about something that most people never connect the dots on, and that is convenience. Convenience, convenience, convenience. We live in a world of convenience, and that convenience is quietly harming our body. Most people think of, you know, life, aspire for life to live in this realm of comfort. You know, they want to rest more, sit more, make things easier. That's what's taking care of yourself looks like for most people. But here's what I've started to think. You know, what if we have that backwards? You know, what if the things that we keep removing from our lives, the effort, the friction, the physical demand, are actually what's keeping us capable as human beings? What if convenience isn't a gift to the body? What if it's slowly taking something from it? And so that's something that I've been toiling with for the past, you know, probably year or two. But here's what I know from working with people for over a decade in this career field. A person can come in, you know, they have no dramatic injuries in the past, they have no obvious causes of life changes, you know, but yet they just start feeling like their body was failing them. And this is how one client put it. She described it as getting smaller. She felt like she was getting smaller because her hips were locked up. She was getting shin splints when she would walk. Her balance was giving her issues when she was going upstairs. And mind you, she was walking every morning. But when I asked her to walk me through her day, and what that looks like, the picture is started to become more clear for me pretty fast. So she drives everywhere. Groceries come to her door. She has an elevator in her building, and everything in her home is within reach. There is no resistance in her life. And so her life is beautifully set up, and her body has quietly paid the price for that. Not because she didn't do anything wrong necessarily, but because the body was designed to earn its function through daily demand. And the demand and when that demand disappears, I should say, the function, it starts to go with it. And that's not my fitness opinion, that's just how biology works. So I'll give you guys a quick exercise science. But there's a principle that we learn about in school. It's called Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law. I'm not going to give you the long version, but it basically just says bone responds to stress by getting stronger. If you remove that stress, the bones become weaker. And we know this through, you know, resistance training and different things like that. And so that same thing happens with the tendons, the cartilage, the fascia. If you've watched my videos before, I speak about how the fascia is the connective tissue that runs through the entirety of the body. It's not just a wrapping, it's also the communication network that speaks to our muscles and tells it ultimately what to do. And so when that fascia is moved regularly, it's challenged in varied ways, it stays hydrated, mobile, clear. But when it sits in the same position day after day, it starts to thicken, it stiffens, and it's easy, for those signals to start to speak to you. And the muscles that depend on those signals, they start to go underperform, underuse. And so the body doesn't wear out from use. What happens is it breaks down from the lack of use. And so there's this woman that I worked with years ago. She was, at the time, she was 63, super smart young lady. Had done everything reasonable advice that had been given to her. She walked every day. She was one of those people that hit her step goals. She watched what she ate. She counted every calorie. In addition to those things, she also did gentle yoga twice a week. And so she came to me because her knees had gotten bad enough that her doctor was starting the conversation about what came next. And so she was scared, not just about the knees, but because she had a trip to Greece planned, and she was quietly wondering if she was still, if that was going to happen, And so I did her first assessment, and I watched how she walked, I watched her posture, and I could see immediately the issue, what was going on. Her glutes had basically checked out. Her hips barely moved through their range. And so she had weak feet as well from years of just supportive shoes. And so her feet were barely communicating with her nervous system because of how weak her feet were. And so every step, she was loading her knees in a way that they never were designed to handle, because the structure above and below them had stopped doing their job. And so her knees weren't really the problem. They were just the ones raising us like, hey, I need some help here. Just telling on her weak glutes, like, hey, they aren't doing their job. And so we didn't work on, her knees. We worked on what her body had stepped or stopped being asked to do, essentially. And so we doing slow, meticulous, specific movements in a way that, that she can actually build from. And the knee pain, it started to come down. She moved differently, more freely now, after about 12 weeks. And so she sent me a message from Greece, and I'll probably add that in the video. But it was a photo from, Acropolis, whatever. But she's basically just talked about, she's like, I walked up it, no problem. I walked up it, I didn't have any issues. And for me, that's the whole thing right there. A body losing its reserves doesn't break down dramatically. It breaks down predictably. And first thing that goes is first thing is the stiffness. Then something starts nagging and it won't go away. Then anti-inflammatory drugs, then injections. Then you're sitting in an orthopedic office hearing the words arthritis for the first time. And here's what I think about a lot as a practitioner. Arthritis isn't always inevitable. In a lot of cases, it's predictable. And there's a big difference between those two words. Inevitable, you can't touch it. It is what it is. It's just going to happen. But predictable, you can intercept that. And that's where I work. Not just after the surgery if you choose to get surgery, but also before, when the patterns are visible and there's still work to be done that can actually change the outcome of your latter years. And let me name some, just for the sake of just education, let me name some specific things that's worth thinking about, because this isn't an abstract idea. And nothing against cars, this is nothing against cars or anything I'm about to list out. But cars, for examples, we as humans were built to walk. It's one of the four fundamental movements that the body was designed around. Anthropologists they've known this for years. And so before cars, walking wasn't considered an exercise. It was just how you got from places, on uneven terrain for real distances, But what we have more of now is the parking lot walk to the door. But anyway, so next with elevators. Again, nothing wrong with elevators, but taking stairs helps load the glutes and the hamstrings and the whole backside of your body. And they're responsible for maintaining your posture and to help protecting your lower back in the first place. And so every elevator ride ultimately skips that. And so it's no big deal once or twice, but it becomes a significant big deal over a decade, And so we live in a time also now where groceries can just be delivered to our doorsteps, right? Carrying things is a fundamental human movement. Walking while holding weight, works the grip, your shoulders, your core, the whole stabilizing system, really. And so when everything comes to the door or we just do curbside pickup because it's easier, the patterns that we need slowly disappear. And lastly, the last perfect, comfortable chairs. This one surprises a lot of people. And so a chair that fully supports the body removes the body's need to support itself. So what do I mean by that? The postural muscles that we have should be doing low-level constant work all day long. And so discomfort when you're sitting down within reason is a signal to move more. It's not to say, I need to get a comfortable chair, because a good chair removes that signal. And over years, the muscles that were supposed to respond ultimately are getting weaker now. And again, none of these things are dramatic. We don't think anything of it. They're not dramatic on their own, but stacked together across years, decades, you get a body that has been systematically relieved of the demands it was built to handle. Just that simple. And a body relieved of those demands, of that tension, that stress, it starts to become fragile. Again, not all at once, but gradually, until one day the man shows up in the form of a stumble, a trip, a flight of stairs, a walk up the Acropolis mountain or hill or whatever. And that gap between what the body can do and what the moment requires becomes impossible to ignore then people want to pay attention. But most people think the goal is to make life easier on the body. No. I think that's the wrong statement or question. The goal isn't to protect the body from demand. The goal is to build a body that can handle those demands, handle the stresses that come with life, because the demand is coming. It should come anyways. And so the question, I believe, is whether you're ready for it or not. Has the years of convenience quietly made sure that you are more fragile when you're older? Because that bridge stays up because of, like I said, the bridge that we talked at the beginning of this video, that bridge stays up because of the tension. Your body stays capable for the same reasons. It needs that tension. It needs those outside forces, that resilience, or it helps build resilience, I should say. But anyways, if something in this video landed for you, if you recognize the gradual retreat, the things that got harder without you deciding to stop them, come talk to us. Schedule a movement diagnosis with one of our fitness practitioners at Iron City Biomechanics, and we'll look at what your body has stopped being asked to do, whether reserves have quietly depleted, and what a real path back to a capable, resilient body looks like for you specifically. The link is in the bio. We're here in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Again, I'm Naraya, reminding you to move better and live stronger. Peace, love, light, and healing.